Welcome to the Spot Real Talk. My name is Tiara.
I'm Lawanda.
I'm Tiffany.
And I'm Ron.
And today with us, we have a very special guest. He is the director behind the film that we recently recapped, Charm City Kings. And he's also an award-winning filmmaker. So please welcome very special guest, Manuel Soto.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us.
Yes.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to be here. Very much looking forward to this conversation.
Good.
Awesome.
You are too. Look, love the hat.
Oh, of course. This was actually inspired on artwork, an art piece I saw. It's the "Make America Great Again" hat. But,
That's I like that a lot.
I was like, oh yeah, that's the message. Vandalize that message, you know.
So how are things with the success of Charm City Kings? Riding away.
I mean, it's been very different from the expectations I had. Before COVID broke, we were having all these conversations about the theaters, and it was going to be on over 1,300 theaters nationwide, which for me, coming from Puerto Rico, the whole idea of having something that spread out is massive. So we were very excited for that. And as the pandemic kept, progressing, we were a little bit, we were concerned. They pushed the dates to August 20 something, or around that date. And then as everything started getting worse, that's when Sony, because it was gonna be released through Sony Pictures Classics, and that's when Sony decided that they were gonna push all their titles for 2021. So their lower tier budget projects, they were opening it up for, they were selling it. And luckily, the people from HBO Max, who I think they hadn't yet released their platform when they acquire Charm City Kings, but they came with a lot of enthusiasm as they saw the film kind of like to be one of the pillars of the release of the platform. And to our surprise, it exceeded expectations in terms of viewership and new subscriptions for the platform. So that's kind of like I guess that's a new way of saying box office hit.
Well, that was actually one of my questions, so I can write that one off. But one of the questions I do have for you is, now Charm City, of course, is an adaptation of Lofty Nathan's 12 O'Clock Boys. And I'd like to know, what was your takeaway from that documentary to help you with Charm City?
Well, the documentary, I saw it when it first came out, I think 2013, if I remember. And I hadn't seen it till I got this project. And when I saw it again, I noticed that it is more of the script is inspired on the documentary more than it's based on. It definitely, it lives in that culture. It lives in that city. Its starting point is pretty much the same. A kid who loves animals, wants to be a vet, and loves bikes, and whose brother is dead. So that's definitely the starting point that Barry Jenkins used to create this story. And after he went on to do Moonlight, that's when Sherman Payne came in, and he added all this more of this like Stand By Me banter and relationship between the kids, making it more into a coming of age story. But it definitely derails from the documentary in terms of what happens to the characters or not. But what we did definitely, and we did purposefully, was give a chance to everybody that was in the documentary to participate in the movie, whether it is by riding bikes and doing stunts, or giving them roles like Coco, the mother of Pug, She is in the movie. She's the one that's at the porch. She has that very funny bit,
Yeah.
and that's her. That's all her, really. Like we had some bullet points, but she definitely did her thing, and she was herself, which was fantastic. Pug, who the documentary is based on, he plays the brother of Mouse, the one that passes away. So the beginning part, that is Pug from the documentary. And you get like all the Midnight Click writers. A lot of them are part of or were part of the 12 o'clock boys crew. And
My son, excuse me.
No, go ahead, because that's
No,
pretty
I'm
much
sorry.
that
And
I can
I was
remember
gonna
now.
say, when you talked about the Midnight Crew, I watched Charm City with my son, and right away he recognized Chino. He was like, "That's Chino from the Dream
Uh-huh.
Chasers."
The Dream Chasers, yeah. Well, Chino is the perfect example of how this subculture breeds talent. Like it's just like anything that starts from from the streets, like skateboarding or inline skating, BMX. Like all this was first streetwise, and it was criminalized for a while. It's still illegal to ride skateboard somewhere, but now you have the X Games and everything going on. Same thing with like snowboarding and whatnot. And even with graffiti was vandalism until now you see murals everywhere.
Right.
The same thing will happen with bikes and what they do, because they're not out there, like they're not speed racing. That's not what they do. They're literally tap dancing while popping a wheelie.
Hmm.
That's
Good point.
that's a talent that's unheard of.
Indeed.
And I can see that eventually becoming an art form to the point of games. And so Chino, kind of like Dreamcatchers, Under Armour, and Rock Nation, for example, they are validating the sport for it to have some legitimacy, so that the criminalization stops. And I think we should foment that.
Excellent.
Absolutely. And I don't know if you know, but we're kind of very close to Baltimore. So, we've seen them doing those tricks, every once in a while, you might catch them on the highway doing some tricks.
Uh-huh. And it's great. Like every time I see one, it's like soothing. It's better than a billboard. Like I'd rather see a couple of those guys riding by than watching billboards selling me stuff that I don't need.
Yes, I was happy to see Meek in this role too. Meek Mill. The team knows I'm originally from Philly. I had to say that. So I was happy to see Meek Mill in this role.
Oh man, he did great. It was crazy because when I came into the project, he was already casted. Like even before, like he's gonna play Black. Same thing went with Chino. Like Chino was gonna be Jamal. Like that was like already set before I came in. And as I guess like when I came in, I don't know if it was prior to that or right after. That's when Meek Mill went to prison. And he was for a couple months. I don't remember how, more than 5 months, I think. And as we were almost about to start, doing like serious pre-production on the film, that's when Mick is released, and he came back to the project. And I think it added. I think a lot of the demeanor from Blacks comes from a combination of authenticity from a non-actor. But also authenticity from somebody who went through exactly what Blacks went through in the film, except that Nick is a rapper and Black is a mechanic. That's pretty much the main difference. We never say why Blacks is in prison, but Mick went to prison because of a video that showed him popping wheelies, and he broke parole because of that. So like it goes to show you a lot of like how real life characters or real life talent who have gone through things that characters go through add a nuance that somebody who have never been through something like that would mimic. Like even myself coming in with on the film, what Nick brought to the table was not the first reaction that I would have from a gangster who's trying to do good, but his composed and subtextual pain carries so well that really adds different layers to the character, and different dimensions to the character that comes from authenticity, not from performance.
Excellent.
Your work, the dinner party, was also based on real life experience. Can you tell us how that came about? Because I'm making the assumption that the tape was real, the tape recording of the session hypnotist was real, but everything else was what you added.
Yeah. Well, that was a special project. When I came to LA, for I guess 4 years maybe, I was experimenting with VR. I was really like I did La Granja, I did the festivals, I got my team together, and in that whole process of finding scripts for me to do, I was experimenting with VR, and I helped build the VR department for Riot News, and through that I was able to travel around the world and go to places in conflict and let the people share their stories as opposed to me being there and sharing an opinion about their stories. And through that, we started like experimenting with the language of VR. And as a filmmaker and as a narrative filmmaker, fiction filmmaker, I always wonder how can that envelope be pushed more, because there were a lot of rules with VR. And Charlotte Stout, she's writer for like Homeland, and she did writing for House of Cards. She wrote this script inspired on Betty and Barney Hill, based on the true story of the first recorded alien abduction. And the tapes of that recording, you can find them online. They're super eerie. But she developed this script, which was great. It's like what happened prior to the tapes being exposed to some friends. And I'm finding the comfort of feeling safe, sharing an unknown or comfortable situation with friends, only to reveal a deeper concept behind it. And that's where I saw the opportunity of, okay, I think this is the best script I could find that's already written, where I could experiment what I wanted to do with camera movement, and kind of like make it more cinematic as opposed to just a VR experience. And taking the fact that after you read like the 40 or 50, hear the 40 or 6 or 50 minutes of tape, I started noticing that the reaction to the alien abduction was directly attached to the experience of being a Black man in America and a white woman in America. And they both were abducted at the same time. They both came back at the same time, but her experience was like this LSD trip, beautiful, but his experience was closer to rape. And how do we communicate this experience in a way where we don't have to mention race? We show you how it feels, but sensorially. And that's where the whole concept of, you have space, aliens, if we're all stardust, and all our physicalities are really, how you say, they're obligated by the rules of physics of here, but who knows how things work out there. So using the particles and using sound and cacophony, that's how we were able to represent that feeling with noise and sound. And when they come back, it's kind of like it became really a conversation about white privilege versus brown disadvantage. But I personally, I didn't want to make it about it. I wanted to make a sci-fi alien experience, but the subtext is definitely there. And those were the conversations that rose up. The conversations that rose up after the screenings with people, and it was great to see, because I'm like, I never mentioned anything, and they were like, no, we know, but we felt this. I'm like, yes, that was the whole point.
Yeah, I think I caught that when I watched it, and I watched it a few times because I thought it was interesting what she said. She thought it was safe for her to share. Just seeing how the friends reacted, and the fact that he felt so exposed by it. His experience was so different and so terrifying, and almost like her not having a clue or a sensitivity to it at all, just kind of being blind or ignorant to the fact. I thought it was a really good way to have that conversation without necessarily having that conversation.
Correct. No, and everybody's like, these are liberals, these are woke people, these are friends. And even so, you'll never really understand. And I think that was kind of like a good, I had a lot of fun experimenting subtext, especially with that film, and I feel very comfortable exploring subtext.
Do you think it's easier to do that with the VR format, just because the format is a little bit different than traditional video?
Not at all. It's super complicated.
Okay.
First of all, I mean, we could do this film because the technology finally caught up to what I wanted to do in terms of camera. That rig that we use is a 9-lens camera rig from China. They had that technology, and so we rented the equipment. And in order for us to do the whole movement and everything, we had to build a stage, almost build a house from the 50s, from the 40s, and we had to use a techno crane, lift it up like 10 feet, stretch it, and then put the camera upside down. So that way we can start up above, and all we had to do is replace the top. But there's no interference of the equipment or the crew by doing it that way. So we had to get really creative on how we can hide ourselves so that we don't get to see. But what's funny is the technocrane operator, I forget his name, but he's brilliant. He couldn't see either where the camera was.
Wow.
We just practice, and he was just doing it by instinct.
Wow.
And it was, I don't know how many takes we did, but we shot all the rehearsals and we shot during the whole shoot. It was only like 1 day of rehearsal, 1 day of shoot. I think we had more than 20 of those shots. And I think the one that we ended up choosing was take 15.
Wow.
Yeah. But that's why like the theater aspect of it helped a lot, because it's like a reverse theater.
Well, I'd like to ask a question about Baltimore. I know that Baltimore, it has the reputation of its beauty and also its violence. And my question to you is, was there ever a point in time when you thought, this might not be a good idea?
Not really, to be honest. There is something about shooting in location that I will always prefer. There is, even though you can't smell the film, you can see it. It's something weird. Like, and yes, you can maybe shoot it in Atlanta, and you can shoot it in other places that have row houses. But even if I just said the name of that series, even House of Cards.
House of Cards. Yeah.
Shot in Baltimore. A lot of those places that had to do more with like real houses style. It is a tough city because the nature of the city, meaning it has been neglected, it has been forgotten, it has been pushed aside, marginalized, and disenfranchised, especially the inner city. But I felt like I was shooting in Puerto Rico, to be honest. It's like you have to know what you're doing, you have to know who you're talking to, and if the community is okay with it, you'll be fine. So doing that community outreach and definitely having people from the community be a part of the film, like Willie Wayne, Coco, and others, they were integral into us being safe. And the police did their part, they did the lockoffs, but there were moments where something happened a couple of blocks ago and the police had to abandon the lockoffs, and we were there left by ourselves. And so it runs the same worries and safety issues that you would encounter in Puerto Rico if you did it the wrong way. But as far as the people go, I feel like home, to be honest, except for the weather. The weather is crazy. Yeah, we started shooting, it was 98 degrees, and by the time we ended shooting, it snowed twice.
Wow.
Oh no. Wow.
Yeah.
Like Texas.
Yeah, Puerto Rico is summer all year long.
I can tell from the locations where you were shooting, some of it reminded me of The Wire. And that was one of my favorite series.
we shot where the wire shot. That was pretty
I
much.
thought so.
But not on purpose, though. It wasn't on purpose. That's the thing. Like we had one of the location scouts worked on the wire. He worked on homicide as well, and he took us everywhere. And the corners and the areas that we felt that spoke to us. You know, definitely the wire had something to do around the area of West Baltimore. That's why we did the nod on the T-shirt.
Yes, I saw it right away. I saw the stringer at Avon. I said the wire.
Yeah. That's our like respects. You know, like we know we're standing on the shoulders of giants.
Awesome.
That was a great nod.
I did have a question for you about. So I seen that you previously studied architecture, and so how was that transition going from architecture into filmmaking, and is there anything you learned from that experience that you take into your filmmaking, especially with like your sets and how you get your camera angles?
100%. I mean, film has always been my number one passion. It's just that in Puerto Rico you don't have film school. There's nothing like that. Now they're doing more stuff with film. But when I was coming up, there was nothing available for me on film, and everything available film-wise was in the States, or if it was in other country, it was just more difficult because it's another country. Cuba offered it still has like one of the best film schools in Latin America. But when I was going to college, there were issues with the government and the U.S. government and Cuba. So I couldn't do Cuban film school. But coming here to the States was too expensive. NYU, UCLA, USC, it was literally possible for me and my family to cover that. So I did what I like best, second best, which was architecture. And architecture definitely helped me in two things. One was the appreciation and the importance of urbanism and the impact that urbanism has on people. So when they do say people are a product or a victim of their circumstances, it's not just the social, political, economics, but also the geography and the urbanism aspects of it. Most of the people that came from rural areas brought into concrete jungles, that affects and that informs who a lot of people are, how they are, and or people living in the same stagnant state of growth. That does affect who you end up and the conflicts that you're going to face. So the Baltimore or even Puerto Rico, like those are not just backdrops. Those are not just settings to exploit. They actually have an integral purpose when it comes into the decisions of our characters. So I treat them more as a second character, not just as a background. And also with that is the spatial awareness, which is something that architecture is art that you can live in. It's space that you can enjoy. You can manipulate feelings through space. You can see uncomfortable spaces will make you uncomfortable no matter how big they are. And the same way that you can force perspective will lead you to enter or to exit. So having that awareness that space is important, and geography and location, that definitely helps me create stories that live in the world that you can be immersed on. And also with VR, spatial awareness is important because you want to feel that you are in a safe place, no matter how weird it is, that I'm not going to fall or trip. So being able to have spatial awareness helps. And lastly, but not least, it helped me create a thick skin against criticism. because when you do presentations in architecture, they destroy you. Like destroy you. They want to break your soul and see if you are strong enough for the next 5 years. And it's brutal. I have never seen so many people cry in one night.
Wow.
So it definitely helped dealing with criticism. I mean, like right now, I don't know how it works with the how the culture and the climate is, but I mean, in 2000, 2001 when I was in architecture. Man,
It's funny.
it's rough.
It's funny you mentioned I did that too. I my first love was architecture, and I took my first year in college, and something just hit me and said, you know, I just didn't want to sit behind this desk. And I have a twin brother. He went on with architecture, but we used to fight all the time. And you know, it was about structural walls and things like that. And I got so sick and tired of it. So I went into broadcasting, and I really haven't looked back, but you're right. But I love what architecture brings, because as much creative it is, and really scientific, because you know, you have to be extremely right on with your drawing, you know, so a structural engineer can take over. So, you know, when I read that about you, I'm like, oh, you know, you're really home based as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I never finished it because I wasn't passionate about
I was going to say,
it.
it wasn't your passion.
Yeah.
It wasn't my passion. If I was passionate, I probably would have withstood 5 years of of shame. But but I just went on to do advertising afterwards. Studied advertising, but not to be a madman or anything like that. It was more to have an understanding on how the psychology of consumer works, and understand how certain topics, certain people are approached a certain way, how my films and my stories could be not just niche, but definitely reach a broader audience. And through that, understand, you know, the psychology of consumerism in a way, so that I can pretty much try to fight against it or use it to my favor as somebody who never studied a film, who wants to be out there in such a very strong competitive environment. I do believe that advertising allowed me to figure out a way to not just position myself, but also position my stories in a way that will have a bigger acceptance.
Yeah.
So it definitely helps for that. But what it's been used nowadays is not for the best.
Well, we're definitely the benefactor of your change of heart. So I really
Thank you.
Yes.
I'm happy I pursued it, man. I'm happy I went for it. I didn't let the lack of opportunities dictate what I wanted to do. It wasn't easy. It was hard. A lot of sacrifices, but you know, with the right people around, like I'm very lucky to have my fiance with me, who has been supporting me since day one. She's been like the only one who's as crazy as I am to believe that I was going to be able to do something like this, and here we are.
Well, I have one question with Bashir's Dream. I think it's Bashir. Is that his name?
Bashir's. Yeah, Bashir.
Look, man, you know, I'm a man, you know, but I can shed a tear or two, you know, with a movie. I don't mind, you know, letting you know that. That was a very riveting movie, and just what inspired you with that?
So I was in Jordan at the time. I went to Jordan to with Save the Children, the organization, not the hashtag, and they were doing this triptych on the different things that they do around the world, but focusing on child poverty. And we did one in Kentucky in the Appalachians, we did one in Malawi, and we did one in Jordan, the Syrian border and the Satari camp. So the first time, because I had to go twice, the first time while we were flying with no contact, when we landed in Jordan, they told us that they postponed the shoot. So we were already there. We already had plans on what we wanted to do. So the first week we embedded with the Bedouins in Wadi Rum and Wadi Musa. And towards the end, when we were in Amman, one of the guys from Save the Children told us, like, listen, do you wanna go to Idlib, which is right there in the border with Syria? We're like, yeah, sure, man, of course. Like, we're here, and I'm always looking for stories to tell or or I like to speak with people and hear their stories, have more context about the world and how, and people. And being able to go to Elbit and right there on the border, like seeing the columns of smokes from the war on the other side, I met Bashir. And Bashir, a refuge, he tells us his story. And this was one day. So the first half, he's telling us the story, and we were like, well, do you mind if we let you tell your story? Like, we would love the whole world to know your story. And they said yes. So we literally recorded him in his house, and shared his dream. And when we came back, we realized that as a kid, his dreams are very powerful, and his backstory is also very powerful. And those were the two things that we don't have footage of. And that's when I reached out to my best friend in Puerto Rico, Fernando Rodriguez. He has this company called Diet. They do animations, color grading, and a bunch of stuff in post production. And he jumped in. He said, like, yeah, man, the story is great. I've never done VR before, but let's experiment. So it was a process of experimenting with mixed media in VR, which hadn't been done until then because of all the rules that people make up. And then and it became a very touching experience that I was touched when I heard the story, but seeing it play out in with an animation that seems very childlike, seems like something he would kind of like compose in a way, but dealing with such strong topics like, a sniper that hits you in the back and hits an old lady in the head, like it's like so raw, yet from a shell's perspective makes it very touching. And then the ending, we really wanted to like just go all out, and as creatives, like, let's be children again and see how this looks. And it was just beautiful to create, and it did very well. People have been reacting very positively. It's very short and straight to the point. It's a snippet of life of a kid with hopes and dreams that could come true.
And the dream of being a basketball star, I mean, it really just hits home, and how just one moment, one instant can just wipe away that.
On a candy run.
Yeah, the candy run. Yeah, just going to get candy. Wow.
Yeah, man.
Oh, sorry. That's kind of similar to what happens in the forum, and still with Mouse, they have a dream. So it's kind of like a running theme if you see these people in these situations who still have these dreams and these aspirations.
Yeah. I mean, now you don't mention that, you're right. I guess that's a theme that resonates with me, because I was Mouse once. I was like the last story in the farm, Lucho, the kid in the bike. A lot of the stuff that he sees or he experiences are based on my childhood. Like I was never a mule, thank God, but I had friends of mine, neighbors, that ended up in the drug business. I used to live right in front of it, so I used to see everything through the windows, and I used to be on a bike every time, and I was heavy also when I was a younger kid. So a lot of it had to do with everything I saw growing up, and during a time in Puerto Rico where the police became almost, the whole island became almost a police state. When it came to marginalized communities, they gated the marginalized people. It was like bad. And it's called mano dura contra el crimen, hard hand against crime or something. But that was, that made things worse in the island in terms of crime and drugs. And now, the effects of it still linger. Now, it's a narco island. It hasn't changed. And so, I do feel like, those stories definitely I connect with.
Could you tell me this? Have you thought about it? What happens to Ingrid, Lucho, and Santito?
We have
thought about it. I can see a few things happening to Ingrid, but the children for the best.
I had a version of the script where it was an epilogue, and you see how their lives are a couple years later. We never did it, but if I were to do it now, I don't think it would change a bit because things haven't changed in Puerto Rico. They actually have been getting worse.
I was just about to ask.
Yeah, I did that. I wrote that in 2012. 2012, we had 1,700 murders that year in the island. Yeah, in an island. Then 2016, 2015 was when the island was declared bankrupt. And then 2017, you had Maria.
I was just about to ask you about Maria.
Yeah, 2019 or 2020, you had the earthquakes. And and then the government corruption, like nothing has changed. It's only been getting worse. The only thing that has changed is that people are waking up, but very slowly, but they are. Because the summer of 2019, we ousted the governor. We've never done anything like that. That was huge. But coming in retrospect and doing the film and seeing how it could end up, I believe Ingrid, even though what she did was wrong, she actually ended up taking the kid and being a mother to this kid in her own way, which probably would be a little bit fucked up. But yeah, definitely. But like she leaves with the kid and nothing happens. But it's not necessarily a celebration of her. It's it's more of a commentary on how Puerto Rico deals with addicts. Like that could happen, and they'll be like, well, nobody really cares about this person. In terms of Lucho, okay, so I'm gonna go in order. In terms of Santito, the boxer, Santito ends up being a hired gun for the ring, the cockfighting ring, and the illegal trade of drugs and guns. Ruben, the bad guy, he remains the bad guy because in Puerto Rico, that's how it is. And then with Lucio, his sister ends up in this version I did. His sister ends up working at a whorehouse in the ghetto because of her addiction. And Lucho is the only one who ends up making it out.
Yeah, I can kind of see that. I could kind of see
that.
Yeah,
he's the only one that he does it for a little bit, but he ends up becoming free from it.
Yeah, I was hoping Santito would find out what Ruben did and get his revenge.
He will. He will find that out.
Okay, that makes
he will find that out. But
yeah.
He will avenge his father. So yeah, definitely that will be his justice.
Yes.
With Santito, and hopefully hopefully after that he goes good, or he moves to Dominican Republic or whatever and does a different life. Because Ruben is a big guy in the city and killing him doesn't go unnoticed. But yeah, definitely there was a version where, I mean, this is still my version. Just in the film I didn't address it because I don't. Santito he's gay. He's gay. And he's struggling with the machismo around his family, around his culture, and at the end he kind of like breaks free from it. That's why, like, when he went to school and look, it almost reads as if he's longing to be with kids, but he was really checking out the other boys.
They were playing basketball.
Yeah, who the kid that I hit in the movie, it was inspired. It's inspired in the governor that we ousted.
Okay.
When I did the movie, he wasn't governor. Nobody thought he was ever gonna run to anything. His father was the guy who implemented mano dura. Like his father is one of the most corrupt governors that we've ever had, and he's like living life like nothing happened. And his kid, he's always been very disliked by everybody because he was one of those like kids that knows they can get away with anything, and that was like on the come up, right? So when I did the film, because it's inspired on those moments, we were like, wouldn't it be nice to just like
the one you got hit with
get rid of that last name?
Oh,
and
wow.
Oddly enough, 2016, he's elected governor. We're like, oh, okay. Everybody was like, oh, you killed the governor in the movie. I'm like, well, not really. But we did later as a people, we got him out, and that was good.
Yeah, I enjoyed that film. I watched it and I was really drawn in because at first I was just really trying to figure out the connection, and then I really got involved in the stories, and then I was like, well, what happens? What happens to him?
Well, I mean, we didn't do the epilogue. It's written. I'm sure if I find the script, the earliest draft is there. Budgetary reasons and schedule and time just wouldn't allow us to do those scenes. But I know they were written there because of that, the resolution of things at that time, and how we were feeling about those things. Like even the horse that's tied on the tree. I don't know if they do it here, but it's a common practice between poor communities, because putting a horse to sleep is expensive. And also, like, if you were to like put him out his misery, dealing with digging a hole and the body and everything is a mess. So what they do, they take them to abandoned lots, abandoned places. They tie them to a tree and they leave. And it's a terrible thing to do, but it is a metaphor as to how the U.S. has treated Puerto Rico after it's been used and abused. When they found no better use for it, they just left it for dead. Look at what happened with Maria. Look at what's happening now. The only reason they talk about us is because we could get seats on the Senate, when that could go both ways. It's not really because of us. So that's why I'm always like, I'm 100% unabashedly pro-independence. But that doesn't mean that I don't like working with you guys. I love American people. They're great. Some of them are great. But the Congress has been less than mediocre.
I understand. I know I was outraged to see a lot of things that was happening in Puerto Rico. I had the privilege of visiting Puerto Rico before, stayed in San Juan and visited Old San Juan, and went to El Yunque Rainforest. And I was wondering, after, Maria, what the recovery efforts were like, if everything is restored. Was El Yunque, is it still there? Is it?
Yeah. I mean, the island, hurricanes are not the problem. That's the price of living in paradise. It's hurricanes every once in a while. It was a strong hurricane. It was very strong. But in terms of the island, as in geographically, it's fine. The crisis is what's man-made, not the natural disaster.
Right.
So the crisis could have been avoided. I don't like to compare, but Cuba got on their feet faster than we did after the hurricanes. And it's because they knew how to manage the issue. Puerto Rico, people were waiting for a storm like this to happen in order for it to lower the prices of the land and take advantage of it and gentrify. And after the hurricane, people came in and almost bought the whole island.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
We
like
see
the
that
community
in New Orleans. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly happened in New Orleans. The same thing. They left food and water to rot just so that they could keep it and release it before the elections. Like, that's local government. Like, Congress government, what they did. They just went in, threw paper towels. They didn't do shit. Like, they left it to die. because like you have the Paul sons and the Christian sons and all these people who were key players on the 2008 economic depression. They're in Puerto Rico buying the coast.
Yeah.
So everything that's prime real estate is being bought by a lot of these powerful Americans, and there's laws made to allow them to do that and move into the island and only pay 4% of tax. It's like ridiculous.
I noticed that when I went on the tour to go to El Yunque, I saw that Pfizer or one of those big pharmaceutical companies was in Puerto Rico, and the tour guide explained that to us, that a lot of those drug companies would come over to Puerto Rico so they wouldn't have to pay taxes.
They wouldn't have to pay taxes, and they live there. But we pay over 30, like, and Puerto Rico with the Jones Act and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
Everything that comes to the island needs to come through an American vessel. So, you can have people from the Caribbean or, from Europe, they go by Puerto Rico, they have to go to Florida, change ships and come in. So everything we get is already inflated 20%. And we don't get paid, we get paid in dollars, but we get paid like $7 an hour. And living in Puerto Rico is super expensive. So it's they couldn't breed us out, so now they're trying to make us leave.
Wow.
Yeah.
I know we're a little maybe over time. I didn't want to keep you too long.
I'm sorry, this topic gets me going.
I know you're such an interesting person, and I love your perspective that you have. I wanted to know what kind of stories are you looking forward to telling in the future?
Well, I think my go-to is always stories that deal with some sort of issue in society that could be addressed either explicitly or subtextually. Like with Charm City Kings, it's a coming of age story about friends and dealing with the harsh realities of inner city and making decisions that could change your life. And what we wanted to do differently there was, instead of showing the outcomes that we know that would happen to a kid like Mouse, which would be end up in prison or dead, we wanted to show, take advantage of the fantasy element and provide a new outlet. What if life is different? What if you could make a difference for a second chance? Like, we never get those stories of second chances. Those are always like, they have been reserved for a certain demographic. But for us, it's kind of like, you're gonna end up in prison or die. Do the right thing. It's like, no, but we are also exposed to run to the bad shit, and we can also have hope. So being able, like, that's very different from La Granja. La Granja attempts to do the opposite. In terms of, there's no hope in a colony, period. So there's no point in giving you a hopeful story, because that's only going to perpetuate the colonial status. But here, which is a different type of environment, yes, we need to change the environment and what happens on these communities. But if you want to know what happens to a kid that robbed a liquor store, just turn on the news, you'll know. We just wanted to show something different, and how that difference is 100% linked to the subtext that I wanted to talk upon, which is mentorship, like mentorship within Black and Brown communities, and also toxic masculinity in the ones that we grew up in. Like, all the decisions, like, we never address it on purpose, but all the bad decisions that Mouse made were anchored on the false pretext of what masculinity is. Like, men don't behave this way, men don't do this, like, men go out and get it. So that toxic masculinity led him to do the wrong decisions. And then the type of mentorship, like, both of the mentors were had good intentions. They all wanted what was best for him. Yet he did what he did. So that goes into tell you, like, it doesn't matter how some things work. Sometimes you need to work overtime to protect the children. And there's no right or wrong way to do good mentorship. The importance is start with good mentorship, and then let's figure out how that works. But if we fear that mentorship could do wrong, that doesn't fix the problem. So, and also with the police, we had Detective Rivers be the good apple of a bad sack. Like, we know that the police has a lot of issues, and there's a few that want to do the right thing. And that's almost like, for me, Detective Rivers serves as an example of what we expect good cops to do, which is take care of the community, be there for them, as opposed to shooting rapidly or putting kids in prison all the time. So like, he's there to for me to be like, he should be a North Star in what policing looks like, not the other ones.
Right.
Well, I like to say,
So that, I'm sorry.
Sorry, but I would like to say that you give credence to our name, The Spot Real Talk. And, you know, I really appreciate your candid dialogue. And I also like to say too, that whenever you need a platform, not that you need one, but if you like a platform, you have it here. And so
I appreciate you, man.
we really appreciate the fact that, you know, we knew that this discussion would be great, but I think you've taken it over the top.
Yes.
I know there was so many things that I wanted to say to you. I wanted to ask you about your inspiration and if you had a mentor.
I guess I was lucky that my dad, who grew up without a father, he experienced coming from dirt to the project. So like, my dad comes from way back when things were very, very rough. And he definitely worked overtime so that I wouldn't have to go through what he went through. So even though he had zero example of what parenting looks like, I believe he did the best he could, and he was a good father for me. So he was very much a Detective Rivers in a way. I mean, he had to work a lot, so I saw him a few times, and it is thanks to him that my strong political and social views are what they are. But a lot of the other aspects of the mentorship had to do with like my soccer coaches. They definitely were there, and the parents of my best friends, Fernando and other, they were always there also. So I had multiple mentors in life. There was this neighbor also, like when we were teenagers, and everybody has like this hormone crisis, and you're fighting everybody in the corner and getting into trouble all the time. He would gather all the kids from the street into his garage. He had a boxing ring, and he used to be a boxing trainer. And he will teach us how to box, but also will be like, okay, you have something with him, now fight. So he would put us to fight, but boxing fight. When it was done, it was kind of like, you know, he will teach us the etiquette of boxing, you know, and then he will give us he will teach us something about life and then let us go. And I remember that because, you know, he would say stuff on like how to, you know, never call. He said this, like, never in your whore life call a woman a whore. And I never forget that. And maybe in Spanish it sounds way better than in English, but when he said that, I have never dared to do that, to call a woman that. Like, it's been, but I remember that it had to do with that moment when he said it. And that's just goes to tell, like, I have multiple mentors, and I understand the importance of mentorship, especially you know, with people of color. Like, we need mentorship. Like, there's an excess of mentorship on the other side. There's a lack of ones in ours. And, you know, I was lucky that the people around me wanted what was best for me. Even if they didn't understand what I wanted, they wanted what was best for me.
Yeah. Awesome.
This has been a wonderful conversation. I mean, I thought it was important to have it with you because, as I mentioned to you before, we're creatives and we want to support other creatives, especially people of color and people behind the lens telling our stories and everything. And that's one of the things I appreciated about Charm City Kings is that you gave him a different ending. You know, it was kind of like a happy ending. He got the second chance. Whereas there were some people that were like, oh, that's not realistic because
I know
this would happen. But I'm like, well, we have the power of the pen. And we have the ability to change that outcome, and you did. So I would much rather see that outcome than you know, the other outcome.
And you're right.
100%.
Yeah, we don't know all the stories, and to say that it's not realistic, you know, who knows? I mean, I'm sure that somebody somewhere has had it, but like Tiffany said, we don't get to see that on the big screen. Because I can tell you, at the as that was playing out, my thought was, oh, he's going to jail. It's done. You know, but when you flipped it, man, I'm gonna tell you,
yeah, but it's like the whole savior thing. Like you know, I don't want to bash any religion or anything like that, but I'm like, it's always white Jesus, the one that saves. Well, what about our black Jesus? Where is he? And like, why can't we have somebody do something that for a specific religion is so, of course, is their cornerstone, but for us, we cannot have that. Right. Nobody can really give their life for you, even if you're not the blood. Why is that so crazy to think? Why do we accept it from somebody we don't know? Exactly. But if there's somebody that we know, we easily doubt it. And I'm flipping that script in the way and turning the story differently. It is the whole thing. Like, you want to see how things end? Just turn on the news. Turn on I'm not doing a documentary. Like at the end, an alien could come and pick him up. It's my story to tell. Like, I don't care. Like, I want to show a different ending. Like, I have been brought up to be sort of like not a pessimistic, but a realistic in a way, and working on this story that it is not real. Well, it is not real because we haven't showed that it's real. Exactly. We haven't given that option yet. And if we can, why not? Why not? Like, that means that kids can see the story and actually see something different. Right. Because, for example, I love Boys in the Hood. This film for me is like a nod to John Singleton, rest in peace. But what happens in Boys in the Hood? The smart kid with a future gets shot. We have seen that story. But what about if the smart kid with a future makes it? We never see that. Like, you know, I was a book nerd. I was smart. I refused. I found refuge in studying, mainly because I didn't want to get shot outside because I saw so many of that. So like, I'm not gonna get shot. So I'm gonna be a bookworm. Like, I was one of those. Like, why not? Why is, like, we know there's every single story. This is just one of millions of stories. So it doesn't end here. Like, more stories should be told in Baltimore with all different people. And why not?
Yeah, I think that's important of definitely showcasing you or highlighting your career, just to show the diversity of your background and the diversity of your experience and how that lends to good filmmaking.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much.
Very well done. Appreciate you so much. I think I can speak for us all when I say that we are certainly going to look forward to your upcoming work. We'll certainly follow anything that you put out in the future. And it's been a pleasure to have you.
Oh, thank you so much. It was a pleasure. I love this conversation.
Me too. Before you go, I just want to ask you one more thing. Would you consider TV, or are you just interested in film only?
No, anything that puts me on a set, I'll do it. Yeah, I love TV. I love film. I've done commercial music videos. If I connect with the story, if I connect to the message, I'll find a way to do it. I'll find a way also to make it mine, to feel like I can own the story as well. And it doesn't have to be like, oh, it has to be a Puerto Rican man. No, I know I can connect with my femininity and tell stories of a woman. I know I can connect with everything that I feel connected with, and I'll never seek in terms of telling how things should be. But like with Charm City Kings, I saw myself in Mouse. I saw a lot of my friends in Mouse, Stuttgart, and Lamont. I saw a lot of neighbors in the MNC clique. Like it's like I could even people in Puerto Rico that saw it, they often say, "Man, you do this in Puerto Rico, have those kids in talking Spanish. It could happen here. Like it's the same story. Like that story happens here all the time." So it goes to tell you like the universality of things makes it approachable. And I just let Baltimore be Baltimore.
All right. Cool.
Okay, well, thank you for your time. We are so
Well,
thank you.
honored and privileged to have you, and we wish you all the best. You will have our full support with all your
Thank you so
projects.
much.
And I can't wait to see what you come up with next. I'm telling you.
Oh man, thanks. I hope I don't disappoint.
Oh, you took.
You won't.
Yeah,
You won't.
Well, no.
Definitely.
Well, thank you so much. I really enjoyed this conversation.
All right.
We did too.
Thank you.
Been a pleasure. Been an absolute pleasure.
Alrighty.
Well, thank
Same.
you, and we apologize if we delayed you.
Nah, you're good. You're good. Yeah. Mine starts at 1, so we're good.
Okay, cool. Awesome. Well, like I said, it's been a pleasure. To all of our viewers on YouTube at the Spot Real Talk, please make sure you keep up with Angel Manuel Soto. Can they follow you online?
Yeah. I mean, I guess everything from Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, all of that stuff is whatever the website is /Angel Manuel Soto.
Okay.
The only one that's different is my Instagram, which is Alo Hemingway.
I love him. Okay.
There's
Yeah,
a
I was like,
There's
Hemingway.
a backstory with that. Well, I'm a fan of I'm a fan of Hemingway's writing. I'm a fan of a lot of his stories in real life. I remember that was like the first book in English that I read was Old Man and the Sea.
Read that too.
So for me it's like he means a lot, but I know he loved his rum as much as I do. So me and my friends used to have this thing of like, today, how what are we gonna do today? Are we gonna drink or are we gonna go Alo Hemingway? So Alo Hemingway was like, we're gonna go all out.
Did you go to his house in Key West? Did you go to the Hemingway house?
I went to his house in Cuba.
I did too.
Okay.
I did too. It was really cool.
Yeah, El Vigía. Oh, I loved it. I mean, I need to go. I need to finish my Hemingway tour, for sure. But yeah, his life is just impressive.
Yeah,
I mean, he had a lot of his issues. You know, his toxic masculinity got in the way a lot. But besides that, he, as an adventurer and a storyteller, he's phenomenal.
he was. I definitely love Hemingway. I know Luanda and I both studied English in college, English lit. So read a lot of Hemingway.
Yeah. No, I like him. Like this tattoo is inspired on The Sun Also Rises.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
That's awesome.
It's really nice.
So at Alo Hemingway.
Alo Hemingway on Instagram.
Awesome.
Until I change it to find a way to change it to Angel Manuel Soto.
No worries. I like that name.
All right.
Cool. Well, thanks again. Like I said, we'll keep up with you and follow you in the future. And best of luck on your future endeavors. And just we are so grateful for your time today.
We are. Congratulations again on Charm City King and all the other projects. They're wonderful.
And
thank you so much.
Yeah, and thanks for keeping it real for us too.
Yes.
Oh man, no, you guys made it easy for me.
All right. Well, everyone, make sure you tune in with us next week. We'll probably be back with some more recaps and more great interviews. And again, we thank Angel Manuel Soto. Please keep up with him and follow him. And I think we're probably going to call it a night here.
All right.
Thanks for watching.
Thank you.
Thank you, Angel. Take care.
Ciao.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.